ladies and gentlemen. I read more of How to Be Accountable today, and it went over a couple of different things, like propaganda to be used for manipulation and questions we should ask whenever we're being told things, especially in terms of someone trying to influence a group. But what I want to focus on is something they talked about. It's called PMT. PMT stands for Power, Threat, Meaning. Now, from what I understand of power, threat, meaning is it's in a situation where essentially someone had power over you, or maybe there was a cultural power over you, or something outside of you had power over you, right? And the threat that can come with that to your own well-being in whatever situation, and the meaning you assign to that event, right? So they said humans can be broken by what happens to us. Obviously, that's trauma, right? Most mental health issues can be correlated to external factors during the time of trauma. So they use like bipolar and clinical depression and things like that to kind of highlight this point, because we are not born with a broken brain. We are given mental illnesses or mental issues by the environment we are in, right? That's excluding like certain disabilities and stuff like that. So bear with me. A lot of the time, whenever we're in a situation that we're not comfortable with and we can't make sense of, our brain will lie to us and try to look for information that will make it feel like we're going to be okay, even if it's an absolutely terrible situation that we don't need to be involved in. So our brains will lie to us, and in certain group dynamics even, or out of fear of rejection, our brains will lie to us to make us think that something should be true so we can be safe, right? So like the way that I look at this is certain groups of people on the internet, right? There are people who go on the internet and claim insane things, okay? Those insane things, and I don't mean like these are things that I just disagree with, but actual insanity and things that logically make no sense. Other people will hear this, and I don't know if they already have a history with this person, or if they have something that relates to this, to what they think this person's experience was, whatever. Right, but out of fear of rejection, people will cling to that, right? People will cling to that, and we will agree with them. So we're not rejected in a group that we want to be involved in. And that's not necessarily the individual's fault. That is something that humans evolved to do. We are naturally social creatures, and at a time, honestly, in some aspects we still do, but at a time we really needed groups to survive, right? It took a number of us in order to survive out in the world because there were threats all around us, right? So we evolved to be in groups and to be afraid of not being in a group, because if you are on your own, you're dead, right? So that's not necessarily the individual's fault. It's just what we were bred to do, basically. And that's, in today's world, that's kind of shitty. To get onto this PTM thing, we learn adaptations in unsafe power dynamics from experiences with people who have power over us. I put in parentheses parents, older siblings, groups of people at school, authoritative figures, whatever, right? Our brains are not generally broken from birth. I said that already. Our experiences contribute heavily to mental health issues in the long run. Understanding someone's history can be very helpful when helping the person individually. Diagnosis does not include everything that has contributed to someone's current mental state. So if someone feels worthless and someone is depressed and they have no motivation to do anything, they have no interest in doing anything, generally they would just be diagnosed as clinically depressed, right? Because they check off boxes, they check off those boxes on a psychologist's checklist. This is what you have. But the idea of this PMT thing is that is not inclusive to what that person went through in order to get to the point that they're at, because every person has a story of how they got to where they are in terms of their mental health, right? Whether that be abuse or just shitty living situations. Maybe they were in a foster care system, and we all know that that's a shitty system. It could be a number of things, but it's a whole lot of, there's a whole lot of things that are excluded whenever we just slap a label on something and we're not actually looking at the history of a person, right? So this idea, it seems to me like it allows for contextual focus on an individual and their diagnosis, right? Because, again, they have a history, they have a story that led them to where they're at right now mentally. Whatever mental health issue that they might have or mental diagnosis that they might have, there's a reason for it. And most of the time, I don't believe it's genetics. There are certain cases where that is absolutely the case, but this idea hinges on the fact that that's not all there is to it. Certain diagnoses are given to you by the environment that you grow up in. So, like, I haven't officially been diagnosed with really much of anything, right? But I have had symptoms of depression since I was a child. I have had symptoms of anxiety also since I was a child. I've been put on medication for the anxiety. I've been put on medication for the depression, all generic shit. And medication can help if you are using it as a tool, but I didn't know how to do any of the work. So obviously the medication didn't fucking do anything. So the environment that I was in, environments, plural, were not healthy ones. My mother, she put me through a lot of things that I feel is absolutely unnecessary to the development of a child in any sort of healthy capacity. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of specific situations, but one particular situation, my senior year in high school, we had to move out of her ex-boyfriend's house, right? We had to move because they broke up, and obviously we can't live there if they're not together, right? They weren't married, they were just together. And where she chose to move us was into a house with somebody that she knew I already had a bad history with. because this particular individual is just a genuine piece of shit. Like, just a real piece of shit of a human being. There is not many people you're going to hear me refer to that way, but this particular guy, oh man. Anyway, he was a pedophile. Okay? So, my senior year of high school, there was a whole lot of fear surrounding my home situation, considering that that guy was a pedophile. Me and him have already had a history of arguing, and I once chased him off of my street in a completely different house. Anyway, we have history, right? And we have a lot of events over a lot of years leading up before this happened. So she told me that this is what was going to happen, and I told her I would rather the fuck not. And she told me that we didn't have a choice. And I kind of don't believe that. But I don't really know. I feel like there could have been something else. But again, what do I know? So there was a whole lot of fear of being assaulted and getting into a fight with this guy. This guy at the time weighed probably about 400 pounds. He was a big dude. And he owned quite a few guns. The guns did not make me nervous. It was him with the guns that made me nervous. And even in that house, we got into a lot of altercations. A lot of them. And so while I'm battling this at home, school isn't much better, right? I didn't necessarily get bullied my senior year of high school, but things just weren't going very well for me. So there's just a whole lot of survive going on, right? In my senior year of high school alone. So I'm in a situation where I feel absolutely powerless trying to cling on to whatever control I have. And it's not going well for me. Like at all. So when I was kicked out of that house, me individually, I got kicked out of that house, I was fucking relieved. I finally crossed some sort of boundary, and I fucked up hard enough to get myself away from that environment. I'm not necessarily proud of the way that I left, but I'm glad that I got away from that environment. Because that was a really fucking bad environment, just across the board. Anyway, so there are certain questions that you have to ask whenever you're thinking about this PTM thing. How has power operated in your life? Was power used against you in harmful ways? Have these harmful ways affected you as an adult? Like maybe you can't be around people yelling. Maybe you can't stand authoritative figures. There's some sort of effect to it, right? There's some sort of effect to your adult life from these situations. As children, we don't fucking know how to heal or to cope unless you're in therapy with a really good psychologist who knows what they're doing and specializes with children. You know what I mean? So chances are you probably, if you've had any situations like this, you've probably had some sort of trickle effect, I almost want to call it, from these events in adulthood. What meaning did you assign to these experiences? How did you make sense of the experiences? What kind of threat response did you develop due to these experiences? i.e., what did you do to survive? In my particular situation, I didn't realize this until today, but I made myself big as if I was fighting off a bear. Okay. So it's not like physically I was a big person. I'm still not. I'm still quite skinny, but I made myself more imposing, and I made myself louder and seem fearless, right? Because in my mind, if I seem fearless and I just come across as a threat to whatever the threat around me is, that threat is going to leave me the fuck alone, right? That's what I did. And I spent a lot of years in that mindset. I spent a lot of years in that mindset. Even before senior year, but senior year in high school became really prevalent for me. That's whenever I had to get really explosive, or I felt like I had to get really explosive because I felt like I had to defend myself. I had to be bigger than the threat in front of me. So something I thought was kind of interesting and something that I've started doing in my journaling is telling stories about my experiences, because telling stories about experiences can help us process them and help us do the work to heal and move on. So like today, I journaled about a specific person who I had a prolonged experience with, right? And in this particular situation, there was a whole lot of abuse, and a whole lot of wounds opened up back in that time period. So I wrote about this today before I even heard telling stories, because this was just something that was on my mind. I needed to write down so I could process and move the fuck on from it, because I'm really big right now and I'm not going to allow my history to affect my present. I'm not going to do that anymore. So I did this, and it really helped me to process everything that I remember from the situation. And in doing so, I felt like I was able to let go of the feelings that were brought on from that situation. And what I really want to do with that is to let go of everything that came with that. Because what that situation brought to me was I treated every relationship as if that person was out to get me. At some point, this person was going to turn on me, and I was in another fight. I was having to fight someone else that I thought I could trust because I thought they were just going to turn on me. So, anyway, another couple of questions. What happened in your past to affect your behavior in the present? What events did you go through? What experiences did you have that you could correlate to today's behavior to? Does that make sense? What work do you need to do for your own self-growth? What do you need to dig into and to process and to let go of, or even just come to terms with? There are things that happen to people that you may never be able to let go of, but there are things that you can come to terms with and accept the fact that it happened. Feel whatever it is you need to feel. Remind yourself that situation is never going to happen again because I've done this step and this step and I've done this to make sure that that never happens again, and move on. That is a defense mechanism that I think a lot of people use. When something happens, we make sure there is no possible fucking way in hell that whatever just happened is going to happen again. In certain cases, physical violence, someone gets their ass beat and they decide they're going to carry a gun, right? They're going to make sure that they never get overpowered like that again. Because getting your ass beat, not only does it hurt physically and could kill you, it brings on a whole lot of humiliation, and it brings on a whole lot of feelings about your own self-worth because you lost. So that to me was a really good example. You have to remind yourself of that, because it can be really easy to be hung up on the fact that that happened to you. Whatever the experience was, whatever the situation was, it can be really easy to hang on to the fact that it happened. And whenever you're replaying images of the event, or even reliving the feelings, or maybe you're right where you were whenever the situation happened, depending on the severity of the situation. That's a common thing with PTSD. You don't know that you're not in that particular event anymore. You don't know, because your brain and your body feel like the whatever it is that triggered this thought, it has brought you to exactly the experience that traumatized you to begin with. So you're feeling a whole lot of things. You're literally reliving the event. And that can be really hard, especially if you're doing this all the time. I'm not saying I have the cure for PTSD, or I even know the first fucking thing about treating it. But what I am saying is things that we go through as we're growing up, and things that even we go through in adulthood, don't define us. They don't have to be our identity. Yeah, they can cause a whole lot of turmoil and even like mental damage, and bring on other issues that are going to extend beyond that situation. However, just because something happens to us doesn't mean that it has to define our future. There are a whole lot of things that I have done, or I've done to myself, or things that have happened to me directly, that I couldn't even tell you how I walked away from. Okay? There are situations that I've been in that I didn't ever think I would get out of. And in some of those situations, I literally thought my life was over. Whenever I first got my felony charge, for those who don't know, I'm a felon. I really thought my life was over. I thought I was going to spend a long time in prison, and by the time I got out, there was going to be no fucking point to doing anything in life, because of how old I was going to be by the time I got out, had I gotten the max penalty for my charges. So I had a very irrational solution to that, and that was going to be Control-Alt-Deleting myself and never having to worry about that again. But I didn't do that, and it turns out I got a little bit of leniency. I think honestly it was because of my character witnesses that I had, and the prolonged period of time that we were going to court over this particular case. And I got off easy compared to what I thought they were going to give me. And you know, I'm kind of glad that I'm still here, because now that I'm still here, I'm able to grow and learn and be better in every way that I can think of being, because I want to be a better person. I have the goal to uproot things that I have believed about myself, and I have the goal and the drive even to change behaviors that need to change in order to live a better life. I couldn't do that if I had killed myself 5 years ago. Not a fucking chance. 6 years ago. 6 years ago. So I try to look at it that way. There are situations that you may run into in the future that you might think you're never going to get out of, or that are going to be the end of you. They won't be. You'll get out of it. It just takes a matter of trying in a constructive way, in a way that's as safe as possible for you to get out. So you can then move on with your life and heal and grow and learn from whatever it is you need to learn from that experience. I've had to learn a lot of things in a very short span of time in my growing up, and a lot of those things that I felt I had to learn aren't necessary for living a good and happy life. Those things have brought on a whole lot of negativity and have made me somebody that I fucking despise. Because there are things about myself that I believe to my core that aren't true. There are things that I believe to my core about other people and the world altogether that aren't true. And that's the whole goal, is to rewire all of that. Uproot those beliefs, get rid of those beliefs, and put better ones in. Move the fuck on and be better. It's the entire goal here. And in reading this book, I feel like I'm getting a lot of tools in order to do that. And I'm actually using tools that I've learned before in order to do the work. And I've never gone this deep. I'm on, what did I say I'd be on? Day 4 when you watched yesterday's video. So when you watch this one, it'll be day 5. I'm on day 5 when you watch this video. And I feel like I've made so much more progress than I ever would have had I not done it this way. And the only reason I've gone this hard is because I've exhibited behaviors and done things that have absolutely fucking ruined the only few things that are important to me in life, and that kicked my ass into high gear to make these changes happen. Because I can't be that person. I can't go through life thinking that someone is going to turn on me. I can't go through life thinking that every relationship is going to turn into a battlefield. I can't do that. I can't keep expecting the worst out of people who have never shown me bad, who have never shown me that they're out to hurt me. But I expect the worst out of people because that's what I've always been shown, and that needs to change. Even if the world as a whole never stops showing me how bad it can be, I need to stop expecting the worst out of people. And that's what I'm working to do. I have had to go through a whole lot of events in my head. Today, that's all it's been, is events in my head. Things that I have done or situations I've been in where I felt like the world was against me. And I've had to forgive the people involved in those situations. I've had to go and forgive myself. I actually am going to write about forgiving myself after this video's edited, because that's what needs to happen in order for me to process and move the fuck on. I have to start giving myself the grace that I need in order to learn and grow, and allow myself the space to make that work happen. That was a whole lot of tangent. Yeah. That's what I got for that one. Those are the notes that I've taken. I still have 3 hours and 9 minutes of this book. And in the, I don't know, I guess 20 minutes or so that I listened to this book today, I've taken another 5 pages of notes. Dude, I've got a lot here. I have so much here. Um, if we want to hear about propaganda and why that's important in terms of manipulation, I would like to see comments on that. Because if not, then I'm going to continue reading the book, taking notes, and move on to something else. But if you want to hear about propaganda, because the only reason I even bring up propaganda and the only reason I've taken notes on it is because it's a chapter on training ourselves to think critically, right? Think logically even, because there's a lot of shit on social media and news stations and anywhere else that don't make any logical sense, but they're being pushed at us because that's the whole goal, is to influence as many people as possible and make things that seem insane palatable. So if we want to hear about propaganda, I'm all for it, but if not, I'm going to move on and continue with the growing aspects of this book, because that's what I'm trying to take out of it anyway. So that's what I have for this one. I hope you're having a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, whenever you watch this video. I hope it's a great time for you. I will see you in the next one. Bye.